Okay, well, welcome everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. It's about 5:36. Good evening and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Michelle Bedard. I'm the project planner for this project. Also with us tonight is Jessica Grant, the supervising transportation planner, Derek Bailey, the principal traffic engineer, and this presentation will also be translated into Spanish by my colleague, Teresa Sojin. To listen to the presentation in Spanish and Espanol, select the translation button option in the Zoom webinar. Also, as we get started, I would also like to encourage you and remind you and encourage you to attend the meeting tomorrow evening. That will be held at La Cumbre Junior High School and in the cafeteria. And tomorrow's meeting will be an open house format where you can come in and view the plans and talk with us in person and ask any questions you may have. And then for this evening, there will also be an opportunity to ask questions after the presentation tonight. We will have a Q&A format we can use, and we will go through the questions item by item. Okay, so again, thank you. Jump right in. So the purpose of the meeting tonight is to do a brief refresh of the project scope. We last met in January of this year. Tonight, we will focus on the design of the Modoc Road protected bike path and what that path might look like and how it may impact the on-street parking. So we'll have a conversation about both the design and the parking conversation. And then we'll talk about next steps and how to stay involved. So just again, as a brief refresher, this is a slide we've shared in previous presentations. This is a kind of a busy map, but generally what this is kind of an example of the existing and proposed bicycle network in town. The existing lines are in black and are the existing infrastructure, and the areas in red are the proposed infrastructure as part of this project. Essentially, what the goal of the project is again to connect the West Side and Lower West Side neighborhoods to the greater region area, to the downtown, crosstown connections to the waterfront, connections to the Modoc, Las Positas multi-use path that take you then on to the Goleta and UCSB area. This project will also complement the recently constructed Westside Community Paseos project, which was a separate project, a separate prior active transportation project. But on this map, just again to focus on the purpose of tonight's meeting, we'll be talking along about the segment of Modoc Road and the bike path on that segment of this project. So again, this is just a brief refresher on the overall project. This diagram illustrates the proposed sidewalk infill. And sidewalk infill is just essentially the process of adding new sidewalk where sidewalk doesn't exist and or completing missing segments to areas of existing sidewalk. So for example, the existing sidewalk infill is proposed on West Valerio Street. That's this segment here. If you can see my cursor, I'm hovering over West Valerio Street. This is an important connection to the backside of the Elings Park. And then also it allows for, school day trips and field trips walking from Harding Elementary School. They'll have a safe route with completed sidewalks to Elings Park. The other areas of town, if you can see over here on just over here on Euclid Avenue, this is an important connection to the across the highway. It'll go over Mitchell-Trina Street. Right now, there's an existing kind of beaten path, informal sidewalk that goes down from the Mitchell-Trina Street down to Euclid Avenue. And this connects as an important connection for Westside residents to the Westside Community Center. Other areas of sidewalk infill will be focused on Manitou Road and Pedregosa. This is a popular walking path right now, currently without sidewalks. So people are walking in the streets adjacent to traveling vehicles. And the segment of the sidewalk infill will be on the south portion of the street between Hillside and Mountain. And then again, another segment is along Calle Real. This is again another important school connection, safe routes to schools connection to get residents and school-age children from the west side to Adams Elementary School and on that side. So again, the overall project completes major infrastructure gaps and provides safe pedestrian and bicycle routes to school, work, recreational areas, waterfront, and neighborhood services. And again, a brief refresher on the pedestrian improvements for the overall project. This is focused primarily along Modoc Road, San Andres Street, and this will primarily involve crosswalk improvements, curb extensions, refuge islands, additional corridor lighting along San Andres and Modoc Street. Again, this is more of a pedestrian enhancement to make pedestrians, people choosing to walk, have safer walking routes, connections, highly visible crosswalks, more pedestrian lighting, etc. Next slide we have. So now that was just a brief overview of the project. Now we'll transition into the conversation tonight regarding the Modoc Lane bike path. The segment of the bike path will be on Modoc Road between Mission Street and Las Positas Road. Originally, the grant scope of the application included a two-way bike path on the north side of the street. And that's the opposite side of the street from La Cumbre Junior High and Santa Barbara Community Academy. Originally, after many community meetings on the design and the reasoning for the path to be on the north side of the street versus the school side of the street, ideally, we had hoped for the two-way design to be located on the school side of the street. However, this side presented safety and sightline issues. And the intent of the project is to provide the safest options at the time. And at the time, the north side of the street was deemed to be the safest route. That said, after, again, many community meetings, we've received a strong desire from the community to transition the design and incorporate a design with into a one-way design on both sides of the street. Between the last meeting and this meeting, we had to go back and do some further operational analysis. We also found that this one-way design was desirable from a safety perspective along the Modoc corridor, especially considering the number of e-bike riders we're experiencing on the city and regional roadway network. Before we could proceed with this revised design option, in the final design efforts, we needed to evaluate the revised design and verify that the costs would fit within the grant budget of the grant-funded application. And we have since concluded that this design is in the ballpark of the design and construction costs of the grant. Some of the remaining questions will have to do with parking, and we'll discuss that in the next few slides during tonight's presentation. So just to briefly, this was just in concept, this was just the grant design. This was a two-way design on the north side of the street. You'll see La Cumbre Junior High here on the south side of the street. One of the benefits of transitioning to a one-way design is that this design, even though it's going to be two-way with the limitations of the existing right-of-way, this would have been sort of a narrow roadway, or excuse me, narrow bike path for a two-way bike path. This is just an example of a picture. This is from J Street and Davis of a two-way design on street level bike path protected with bollards. Keep in mind, this design is wider than we could have fit into the existing Modoc Road right-of-way. So now the revised design, touch upon that briefly. So what this in plan view, the concept, after receiving community feedback, again, the project team evaluated the design, connections to existing bike facilities, and impacts to on-street parking. and is presenting this revised concept plan for the one-way bike path located on each side of Modoc Road between Mission Street and Las Positas Road. And in the next few slides, I will share a few examples of these types of designs. So our concept is what we call a one-way path, street level, curb protected design. And this is an example from NACTO, which is the National Association of City Transportation Officials. And it provides a visual representation of a proposed one-way street level curb protected bike path. And in this instance, you'll see sidewalk on the right, the landscape buffer between the sidewalk, the pedestrian zone, and the bike lane, and then the curb protected buffer between the bike lane and the vehicle lanes of travel and parking. This demonstration also demonstrates parking and then vehicle lanes of travel to the left. So just again, a picture view, this is a recent example, 17th Street in Santa Monica. This is again, kind of the design that we are looking at to be an on-street level curb protected bike lane. And then just again, a few more pictures and examples, also from 17th Street in Santa Monica. So you can get kind of an idea. The sidewalk over here on the right, separated with some landscaping, and then the on-street bike path with the curb protected barriers. Similar examples on both images. And in this next slide, again, just another example of an on-street one-way street level protected bike lane. This in this case is an example with bollards versus a curb protected curbs to be the protecting element. And this is an example you'll see kind of if you travel on bicycle or vehicle, you'll see in on Coda Street. If you travel westbound, there's a westbound bike lane currently, and it is this similar design protected with bollards. And this is just to demonstrate some additional design considerations. Again, we are proposing to do a on-street level curb protected design, but we have in other areas and some parts of the projects, other projects citywide, we are incorporating some sidewalk level bike lanes. So this is just an example of what that looks like. The difference in these pictures, the picture on the left, you can see it's just different concrete treatments to distinguish the pedestrian way on the right and the bike lane in the middle, and then kind of a furnishing and landscaping zone that separates that from the street. And then on the right, you'll see the sidewalk more to the right with the landscape buffer in the middle, the bike lane at the most right, and then the street and vehicle travel lanes. So the question before we get too much further, we want to discuss why we're transitioning to a one-way protected bike lane on both sides of the street. And for that, we kind of really had to understand who was using the corridor and the types of cyclists. So for the types of cyclists, we have traditional commuters. Modoc Road is a primary connection, again, as I said, between Goleta, UCSB, downtown, the waterfront, between the neighborhoods. It also serves students and students that travel to La Cumbre Junior High, Santa Barbara Community Academy, also possibly to SBCC and to UCSB. In addition, the existing path also serves as a recreational opportunity for people to get to, again, like the Modoc Las Positas path, which you can get to the Oberon Trail and Hendry's Beach. And then, of course, e-bike cyclists, and those are kind of a combination of all of those users we just described. But again, I just want to point out for the design considerations are heavily weighted on e-bike users, this new trend. And from what we've observed from our camera counts, e-bike riders make up approximately 50% of the roadway users. So with that said, safety is a big factor in the design options. And as I briefly mentioned in a slide or two ago, The one-way design option allows wider bike lanes on both sides versus the two-way on the north side of the street. The one-way design allows for improved safety with the wider lines, which also allows for more predictable movements. A benefit to the one-way design is through traveling on Modoc Road. Stop signs will exist at cross streets and will be for cross streets, people crossing Modoc Street. However, in conversations with our traffic engineer, there is a possibility of adding a traffic signal at the intersection of Modoc and Portezuelo, just to kind of help alleviate the traffic, pick up schools, drop off times. This is still in study, and this will be evaluated by the city traffic engineer. But if this were to be implemented, this would be a stop sign for all road users. So again, Modoc Road, again, is a critical path to provide safety for safe connections to schools, work, neighborhood services, and recreational areas. And this purpose, again, of the project, the proposed bike path along Modoc Road will provide safe connections to the different sources of whether you're commuting to work or to school or a recreational experience to the beach, or to UCSB or City College. This path will also connect, in addition to the Las Positas Modoc multi-use path, it will also connect to existing neighborhood bike-friendly streets, such as Gillespie Street and San Pasqual. Okay, so next slide. So again, part of the factoring decision is, recognizing the existing parking conditions, and this is a dense neighborhood with a mix of residential uses, single family and multi-family developments, the school. So before we proceeded with the design, we wanted to evaluate the corridor for the existing parking configuration. And just to orient you, it's kind of hard to see in this image, but to the left side is Las Positas Road, and way over here, down here is Mission Street. And again, LaCumbre Junior High right here in about the center of the picture. So staff conducted a parking assessment to evaluate the existing on-street parking conditions, parking within the public right-of-way. And so the current condition, as you can see in this image, I'll kind of go over, but the areas highlighted in green are areas that allow for existing limited overnight parking. And the limited parking is overnight between 6 p.m. and 7 a.m. The other portions of the road that are not highlighted are existing areas that are already either red curbs and no parking at any time, or that also account for transit stops. So, and in each area, for instance, you can see we have a number called out, 10 over here between Greenwell and Pine, 3 between Greenwell and Parks. And then you can see over on this end, the variety of parking, 18 over here between Eucalyptus and Mission. And so how we got to these parking numbers, relates down to our city parking standards. And so essentially on-street parking is a minimum of 20 feet per vehicle parking space. And so again, this area demonstrates where the existing white curb that allows limited evening parking from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. with parking spaces that meet the 20-foot stall width per vehicle, stall length per vehicle. And so as we've discussed in part of our discussion tonight, and one of the things we're looking for community feedback on is that the proposed protected bike path on each side of the street would eliminate the existing limited on-street parking in the overnight hours of 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. However, this design allows for opportunities to replace some parking with new 24/7 parking. New 24/7 parking on street within the public right of way. And we will discuss some of those options in the next few slides. So here, this is just a brief kind of synopsis of the existing condition and the, again, you can see existing condition is identified to be 72 limited parking spaces between the hours of 6 p.m. and 7 a.m. Over the course of the parking design, the parking study, we observed an average parking demand overnight of 38 vehicles. That's the total stretch from Las Positas to Mission Street. The prior concept with a two-way protected bike lane on the north side of the street would have maintained the existing limited street parking on the south side from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m., which was 36 parking spaces. And option one, we have with the protected bike lanes on both sides. This option allows for new 24/7 parking within the public right of way for 23 spaces. And then option two, wanted to point out for the option one, and I'll show you in the next couple slides, but option one with the 23 spaces would involve some alterations to existing site walls and fences that are currently existing within the public right of way. And option two would be, again, less spaces, but this would be near the Hacienda side, just west of La Cumbre Junior High, between La Cumbre Junior High or the firehouse and Las Positas Road. That would have 12, and that would involve no alterations to existing walls and fences within the public right of way. There's an additional option 3 that's not shown, and it's currently continuing to be studied. The design is under study. We recognize maintaining on-street parking is a known community desire. It is recognized that the options do not match the existing number of limited on-street parking, but this design would, however, provide, again, the benefit of new 24/7 parking versus the limited evening parking. And with option 3, the project engineers are continuing to evaluate locations to maximize the amount of on-street parking. The additional area currently under study is on the south side of the school, the south side of the street, on the school side, located between the fire station and west of La Cumbre Junior High. This option does still need additional study and cost analysis to ensure it won't exceed the budget allocated in the grant. But again, just to reiterate, because there are no alternative adjacent routes to school, to work, for recreational uses in the immediate vicinity, complete and safe streets are the priority over on-street parking in the public right-of-way. That said, we also wanted to just note that the city will be reevaluating the residential parking permit program citywide over the next year. So here's just a visual image, as I just briefly discussed in the last slide, but option 1, which would involve 23 parking spaces. And you can see that would be 12 spaces over here between the firehouse and Hacienda Drive. And then a few scattered spaces along the more easterly section heading towards Mission Street. You have 3 spaces here between Mission and Oak, 2 between Oak and Eucalyptus, and 6 here. So as discussed in the last slide, this figure, option 1, represents 23 new on-street parking spaces, and these new spaces would be available for parking all hours of the day and night. This option, again, as discussed, will necessitate alterations of some private infrastructure, such as fences and walls, which currently are located within the public right-of-way. And those are primarily focused in this area, which is why option 2, which does not involve alterations in the right-of-way, does not have those additional parking spaces. So again, option 2 involves 12 new on-street parking spaces. These would be permanent new parking spaces offered 24/7, day and night, parking within the public right-of-way. Again, this is between the firehouse and Hacienda Drive on the west side, just before Las Positas. And as previously mentioned, staff is continuing to study opportunities to maximize opportunities for additional new on-street parking between the fire station and west of LaCumbra Junior High. Just to point out, you might ask why they can't provide parking on the whole stretch of MoDOC between Las Positas and Mission Street. And just wanted to focus on that, again, the key component of the project is to provide safe modes of travel for all road users, pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles. And the opportunities for new on-street parking are limited, will be focused in areas where the street maintains adequate visual sightline distances and sufficient safe widths for all road users. So meeting minimum road vehicle travel lanes and minimum bike lane widths. Additionally, it is a project goal to preserve the existing street trees. And then additional constraints, we will need to work around existing driveway aprons, utility constraints, and need to maintain the existing transit stops. So that's a lot in a brief amount of time, but just to quickly share, the next steps we'll continue to hold community engagement meetings. We want to continue to have community input on the design before we prepare final design plans. We have to go through the environmental review process. We also will go through courtesy review boards by the city boards and committees. And then construction is anticipated in 2027. And this is a large project with many different components. And so construction, we hope, will be earlier than 2027 wherever feasible. And so just to share how to stay involved, this is the city email and project web address. And then you can attend public hearings and community engagement meetings. And those will continue to be posted online and to our project website. We go through many news source avenues to publicize our community outreach meetings. We want people to attend. We want people to share their voice. So again, I'll use this opportunity just briefly to say, if you can, please attend tomorrow's open house. Again, it will be held at LaCumbra Junior High at the same hours, 5:30 to 7. And you'll have the opportunity to review the plans in person, ask questions of staff, make notes, and provide your input. So with that, we'll go to the questions section. And let's see.
Michelle, I'm happy to jump in here. Thanks everyone
Jessica,
for
if you want to go ahead and facilitate the questions.
Yeah, for joining us tonight. And yes, feel free as we're going through it. Looks like we already have a good list of questions. I might paraphrase some because we already have a fair amount. There's a couple of questions related to the residential parking permit system that is sort of in place near the kind of north of LaCumbra to Las Positas, along the MoDOC Road area, the residential parking permit system. And as Ms. Bedard had discussed in the presentation, that it's a separate effort citywide of relooking at the whole residential parking permit system. And so that is a current work effort underway, headed up by our downtown parking team. The next question is, let's see. electrical bicycles have gained popularity faster and regular bicycles and typically move faster than regular bicycles. Will e-bikes be sharing the road with cars or the bike path with the regular bicycles? So you have a choice by law to any cyclist could either still take the road or be in the protected bike lane. It really is a preference on age and ability of the cyclist of preference. Let's see, the next question is would the project eliminate the jacaranda trees? There's beautiful jacaranda trees along the Modoc corridor. And no, the answer is it's to not eliminate those. We want to retain those in our urban forest fabric, so that protected bike lane where there are jacaranda trees, most of them are right adjacent to La Cumbre Junior High, so those would stay in place. The protected bike lane would just be on the street side of those trees. The next question is where they'll let's see, has to do about parking enforcement. Again, that we're looking at the whole residential parking permit system over the next probably year and a half. Let's see. One person, Michelle, if you can navigate back to the options again, that it was just an understanding of what the reduction is for parking.
You want the table or the?
Yeah, I think the table would be easiest. So there's, again, right now there's not 24/7 parking along Modoc. It is the existing limited between 6 p.m. and 7 a.m. So roughly, just counting, when we count on-street parking spaces citywide, we always count 20 feet would be deemed an on-street parking space. As you know, vehicles vary in size, so sometimes you can get more, sometimes you could get less, but that's the rule that we go by when we're analyzing parking. And again, for that, the observed demand that has been taken with surveys is about 38. And then for the option 1 and then option 2, so option 1 would be 23 24/7, so all day, all night, parking spaces available. And option 2 would be 12 spaces. And I think we're still looking at an option 3, just need to investigate more if there's any other possibility for additional parking. The area where we think we might be able to gain some spaces is just north of the school and the fire station, approximately in that area. All right, the next question, let's see, is when will your slides be available? We will, yes, we can post this on our on the project website, and it usually just takes a few days for us to also post the video. So once the video's ready, we'll post the slides at the same time. All right. Okay, there was let's see, I'm trying to make sure if I understand this. It was a comment. It will be ideal if bicyclists don't have to ride on the seam between the asphalt and the gutter. for better safety and comfort. So if there is a one-way curb protected, bike lanes can be designed or located to avoid that. Yes, thank you for that comment. That's what we are looking for, that, and the design is to try to take the asphalt to the face of curb. So you don't have that. We have that on other facilities in town, and we're trying to get those removed as well. It's not fun getting stuck between the gutter and asphalt. So thank you. I really appreciate that comment. Did you there was a question, and maybe Mr. Bailey, if you could get on for this one. Did you say that engineering might be adding a stoplight on Portosuelo? If you could say a little bit more of what we're looking at in terms of analysis.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. Yeah, basically once the final alignment is there's a consensus around that. We're going to be looking at what is the best way to provide access across MODOC from Portosuelo. And so kind of the two options right now would be either some type of push button activated flasher to cross MODOC or a full traffic signal. We've evaluated an all-way stop, and an all-way stop would create some pretty significant congestion during certain times of the day when MODOC has some busier traffic volume. So really, we don't know yet. It really depends on where we land in terms of the exact alignment to the pathway, but it'll likely be one of those two, either flashers or a traffic signal.
Great, thank you. There was a question about how this project is being funded. So it is being primarily funded by the state's active transportation program through a grant, with some matching monies from the city as well. So we're very fortunate because this is a multi-million-dollar project. And this has been a tremendous grant source for the city for really these transformative and safety projects. Again, most of our funds go directly into maintaining existing infrastructure, so we don't have extra funds for safety or active transportation. We really depend upon grants. So I'm very, very excited to get this funding. So not only is it funding this, what we're talking to tonight, but when Michelle went over the beginning slides, it's funding a lot of the pedestrian improvements along San Andres. And I do want to point out that we were actually, Michelle, if you could go to that next slide and then the next slide after that. So it is funding sidewalk infill. But we were able to expedite some of the safety improvements along San Andres corridor. Again, that is a Vision Zero priority corridor designated by City Council due to the high collision patterns that we see. And so there's a few intersections that will begin construction this year. And we'll have safety improvements right adjacent to San Andres and Pamu. So that would be like right next to the Westside Boys and Girls Club, Victoria, and San Andres. So that's the kind of the back, and one of the entrances of Bonnet Park, and another kind of back entrance to the Boys and Girls Club. And then Sola and San Andres. The remaining intersections, are again currently in design for improvement. So, but we're very excited for that. So you'll be seeing curb extensions, rapid flashing beacons, lighting, all of that. Very excited. All right. Let's see. Okay, let me read this question. It's a comment question. I really appreciate the location of the bike lane inside the parking lane to reduce the current rampant conflicts between bikes and cars. Can you explain why the curb will be at the roadway level rather than at the sidewalk level, which would be much safer? Derek, do you want to explain? Some of the path would be street level, some of it would be sidewalk level. Do you want to go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, I'll do my best. Michelle, do we have any graphics that show any of the cross sections? Or am I able to share my screen?
Why don't you, I think you can share your screen, Derek.
Yeah. Just give me a minute to pull something up here. Okay. How do I, oh, there, I share my screen. Okay, I hope everybody can see this. So this is kind of getting down into the weeds a little bit about the potential.
Oh, Derek, I don't think we could see your screen. Maybe Michelle, maybe unshare your screen. There we go. Now we see it.
Yeah. Great. So again, sorry, start over again. This is getting into the weeds a little bit about the different potential configurations. This shows a cross section of a location, a potential location where we maintain some on-street parking. You'll see on this side of the road, this is the line of parked cars and then the 2 traffic lanes. Anywhere that we maintain on-street parking, the sidewalk or the bike lane has to be at sidewalk level. It takes up a little less space when we do that. One of the issues about having a narrower bike lane is that just think pedaling next to vertical curbs. It's much less comfortable for cyclists, and you're much more likely to clip your pedal on a raised curb. So across the street, we'd be able to provide a 6-foot bike lane. 7 feet's even better because that provides room to pass. But this is kind of the minimum we'd be able to have with an in-street lane. You know, we've started to talk a little bit about the prevalence of e-bike users now. When we have the bike lane at sidewalk level, we're not able to provide much of a separation between the sidewalk and the bike lane, other than just a distinction in surface, like color or a line or something like that. But as far as separating users, having the bike lane down in the street is better. As far as cost goes, having the bike lane down in the street is much better. And generally, if we have areas that we don't have to provide on-street parking, we can provide a little bit wider in-street bike lane that will allow for passing. But just in these areas where we are going to maintain on-street parking, then we are going to have the raised sidewalk. But from a cost perspective, it's not something that we can provide for the entire length of the corridor. So there are going to be certain sections that are raised, but a lot of the corridor is going to have to be down into the street. I'm going to stop sharing now.
One question, Derek, I'm not sure if we have this, the most recent data, how many riders are currently using the on-street bike lanes?
I can look that up while you're answering questions.
Okay.
If we have anything.
Great. One was just thank you for reconsidering it, having a one-way path on both sides. This person was very happy that we're listening to the community and implementing this change. Teresa, there was one question that was in Spanish. And it is from where to where would the parking be 7 days a week? Michelle, if you could navigate to that screen showing where there would be additional parking in both options. And if Teresa, if you could translate that it would be, yes, but roughly just north of La Cumbre Junior High and Hacienda Drive. And then approximately south of Kinshasa Avenue to Mission Street. Okay, thank you. One question was for tomorrow's meeting. It's an in-person meeting. It's an open house format. It is the same material that we will be covering, just without a formal presentation. And it gives people we know everybody's very busy, and sometimes they just need 10 or 15 minutes to take a look, and then they can be on their way. So, and it also gives us, or if you've had the webinar tonight and then you have a bunch of questions that come up, maybe post a webinar, to meet with us in person to follow up on additional details. So just a little bit more personalized in the in-person, but we love the webinars too. I can't thank the community enough for all the great questions that you have.
Hey, Jessica, just while you're looking for your next question, counts done last January, so January 2024 at Modoc and Portezuelo, there were 2 days worth of counts, and there were between 300 and 350 per day. So that was January, so we'd expect that to be a little on the low side as far as average cycling activity tends to drop off a little bit in the winter.
And I think also, if you were to, again, cycling on the network now is more the confident cyclists. When talking with the junior high and principal over the well, different principals, I guess now, because this project's been years in the making. But a lot of what we hear feedback from families is that they do not want their children riding to school because there is not a safe facility. So with the protected bike lanes, we do anticipate to have increased ridership because we're building an all-age inability facility. Okay, there was a question about parking. Why not have it right adjacent to La Cumbre Junior High? Derek, if you could maybe touch on the spacing of the roadway in that section.
Yeah, immediately adjacent to La Cumbre Junior High, the road does narrow by a couple feet. So that's one constraint, and also the desire just to preserve all the jacaranda trees along there. Means that we do not have enough width to provide parking and the bike facilities.
This is a question. Will there be changes to the Modoc and Las Positas intersection? I'm concerned about cyclist safety in the intersection if they're coming to and from the existing Modoc multi-use path. The answer is yes. We would be looking at some striping changes on how to best position yourself through that intersection. We spend a lot of time looking at live cameras and seeing the different cyclist movements. There's lots of different movements and routes you can take, and again, it really varies on the sort of comfort level of the cyclist. So sometimes now, say you were coming from the Hidden Valley area going towards La Cumbre Junior High. So some people go in the crosswalk and then navigate over. Some people do like a diagonal right from that straight into the bike lane. And others are already on the road, and then they continue and go and connect into the bike lane that way. And then for say you're coming from the junior high, if you were on the new protected bike lane or just now, you have two choices. Again, and it really depends on traffic volumes. you can navigate to the left turn lane, and then you have a protected left. So I think that might be some of the, just to have skips to then put you into the path on the alignment. So that's one direction, and others still use the crosswalks. So cross Las Positas and then cross Modoc. So, but it's a huge intersection. So that's also, again, part of the design. So we'll have more details on that for comment as we finalize the design.
Jessica, if I could just
Yeah.
add that if you're kind of northbound, westbound, whatever you want to call it, on Modoc heading out of town, there is going to be a dedicated traffic signal to connect from that direction of Modoc across to the bike path. And then there is going to be some hardscape improvements on the southwest corner of the intersection, just to reduce vehicle turning speeds and make it more comfortable for cyclists to join into Modoc.
Great. And then there's a comment, the current system, our bike facilities have worked for a long time with no accidents, so why change? And again, we're designing all age facilities, and so trying to honor all ages on the bike network. This particular section of roadway in the city is a very critical piece to be an all-age facility, because there isn't alternative routes. So that's the big reason to have a higher level facility than just the existing on-street part-time lanes. All right. Another question about, yes, to extend. So when we're doing the bike lane, to not have the gutter seam in the design. So thank you for that. All right. Is there city law? Is there a city or state law that would prevent use of school parking lot from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m.? I'll have to research that more. It is considered private property. And I would have to follow up with the school district on that particular question. So Michelle, if you could go back to the last slide of how to contact us. I mean, you could follow up in an email, because I don't have a name contact to go with that question. If you could send us that question, and we can get back to you later on that. Just an appreciation comment of, yeah, love having the multimodal paths around town. Great for families, runners, with strollers. So the project is much appreciated. Thank you for that comment. The city spent a lot of money making a new bike path on Mission and San Pasqual. I'm assuming that this new proposed bike path on Modoc would connect to San Pasqual. This bike path is blocked for hours on a daily basis by taco vendors. Is the city going to allow these vendors to use the new bike path in the same manner? Thank you for that comment. So yes, this path does hook into that multi-use little path segment. It's a very little piece, but such an important piece of a bike route connection. So yes, that once you say you're coming from San Pasquale neighborhood going to La Cumbre Junior High. You could hop on that little multi-use pass section and then go right into the protected bike lane. And then the vendor issue that is on the radar. There's been lots of enforcement on that, but feel free to reach out if you see more observations for that, so we can, there is a dedicated team for that. They are not allowed to vend on bike paths. Can you go over the improvements on Pedregosa and Manitou again? Oh, okay, yes, right there. So that's a critical missing piece link of sidewalk. It's kind of the, how would you say, a blind turn. But it's a very popular walking route in the neighborhood, and so a sidewalk would be filled in there where currently there is none. And just note too that we will have more updated once our engineering team. This is a design in-house that we're doing, and they're currently working on the designs for all of these pieces in general. And we plan to have another community meeting just on that. We in order to have the MODOC bike facilities issue solved, so we could catch up in the design with the rest of the pieces, but we will be showing that later on. There's a thing about maintenance of bike lanes are not swept and gather a lot of road debris. Is there a sweeping maintenance for the new lanes? The short answer is yes, that would be part of the maintenance. And there is a particular, what do we call it, Derek? It's like a little mini sweeper that does the bike lanes for that. This was thank you for the response about Pedregosa Manitou. This is so needed, and yes, that's we heard loud and clear from the Westside residents that it was needed. So glad you like it too. All right, is safety really a concern? Then a speed bump on MODOC and eucalyptus should be implemented. So I think what the person asking this question, I guess it's have speed bumps been considered on MODOC? Derek, do you want to address that?
Sure. Yeah. There's a fire station on MODOC, so MODOC is pretty well used as an emergency response route, and the fire department isn't supportive of speed humps on emergency response routes because it'll affect their response times.
Great. Let's see, Marissa. I'm gonna read this question. Messina and I might just need to confirm if I have the right location on this. Gonna go ahead and just read this question out loud, and Derek or Michelle, feel free to chime in. Messina and 517 Modoc Road apartment complexes both have a bowling alley shaped lot at the back that may have initially been intended as right-of-way. For bicyclist safety, wouldn't have been safer to have a bicycle path to go behind Messina and La Cumbre Junior High on the south side of those properties all the way to Portezuelo Avenue?
Yeah, that's a good question. There isn't continuously owned city property back through that direction. So there are some little slivers of right of way here and there, but there's nothing continuous. So that's a big impediment to building anything back there. But also functionally, detouring cyclists a couple blocks out of the way is very inefficient. And so when we're trying to encourage cycling activity, we do want to provide a high quality facility that's really in the most direct path of travel. So I know heading up Hacienda from Modoc is uphill, that would be an impediment for cyclists. The terrain kind of back in there between Hacienda over towards Portezuelo is quite hilly as well. So it wouldn't be a very good route, even if the right of way did exist.
All right, I think we're down to our last question. So thank you for all the answers. I love the project. 2 more questions. Can you reiterate why not a bi-directional path on the school site consistent with Modoc path, with the Modoc path? I may have missed the rationale for the 2 one-ways since I joined late. Yeah, we can explain why there wasn't a 2-way on the school side of the property. Michelle, can you get to the Modoc where we see kind of the whole path section? Essentially, there was an issue carrying through a 2-way path on the school side of the property. There's right at Kincha and Eucalyptus Avenue that those are very come in at a skew, and concern for visibility of cyclists traveling northbound if it was on the south side or school side of the street going northbound, of drivers not seeing the oncoming cyclists. So that was the main reason why initially and as part of the grant, it was on the non-school side initially. And then what we then heard from the public and again, considering all the different types of cyclists and further analysis, that in this particular section, that everybody wanted it on, not everybody, but the strong community consensus was to change it from a 2-way to a 1-way. Mainly, again, we have more room. It's more predictable movements of what the drivers would expect for that, and less stop control for the cyclists. Again, this is busy school route and commuter route as well. And then how much of this is funded by Measure C that could be used if there was more identified design improvements? Derek, remind me, was this the 10% match? So 10%, and then the grant was about 24. I would have to look up.
Yeah.
I need to confirm that. I can get back to the person that asked that. I don't have the cost up. I could wait maybe a minute and I can pull that up. So
it's around 2 million, Jessica.
2 million. Yeah.
Yeah. The short answer is yes. There's not going to be any more Measure C funding available. There's a lot of needs in the city, infrastructure, maintenance. New police station is going to be in construction in the near future. And that's all funded through Measure C. So we can't look to Measure C to fund any more of this project, but we are looking for potential cost savings in other areas of the project. And because this is such an important piece of the overall project, this is a critical bike connection that we really need to get right and really needs to be high quality. So so if this section ends up costing a little bit more, it may mean that there are other features in the project that we can't deliver. So that's kind of big picture funding wise. But I think for now we're focused on trying to make sure that we're meeting the community's needs.
All right. There was the question, is there any plans at the intersection of San Pasqual and Anapamu, right in front of the Boys and Girls Club? People drive fast through there and lots of kids cross that intersection. Completely agree with you. There is that project. We were able to expedite that intersection. So most of the construction for this grant funded project will be occurring in 2027. But the area that Michelle is circling right there, there's a few intersections on San Pasqual that we were able to get additional grant funding for from other sources, Measure A and the Highway Safety Improvement Program. And construction will be starting later this year. Almost, we at Derek, you have an updated month?
No, but I think the question is one block over on San Pasqual, not San Andreas.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out.
No
So
problem,
San Andreas, yes.
Yes, that is good information though. So
Yes.
by early next year, you can expect that section of San Andreas between Carrillo and Mitchell Traina to be under construction with crosswalks, lighting, and eventually towards the tail end of that effort, then it'll be repaved. But the intersection of San Pasqual and Anapamu is not part of the overall project. It is a potential future always stop controlled intersection though, but not currently. And this is going to be a whole other public outreach effort probably a few years from now, but I'll kind of give everyone a preview of what we're working on. The criteria to install an always stop as opposed to just stop signs controlling a side street and then having one street free flow. The criteria to go from a two-way stop to an always stop, that's laid out in the federal and state traffic manuals. They're called the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And there's certain criteria that have to be met in terms of the amount of traffic, the amount of delay, or the collision history. None of those are met at the intersection of San Pasqual and Anapamu. I think functionally, I think we all agree it is probably pretty appropriate traffic control, but right now it doesn't meet any of those criteria, and that's the criteria that the city uses when establishing new always stops. There's a lot of intersections in the city that are probably pretty similar characteristics to Anapamu and San Pasqual. So what we're working on is creating a city-specific always stop criteria. But there's a lot of work that goes into that because we have to consider the entire city. There's a lot of data collection that's going on, and then we have to establish some thresholds that are Santa Barbara appropriate. And so that's probably going to be a couple-year effort just because we're a small group and we're supporting a lot of efforts right now. But this intersection will be a candidate through that program.
All right, I think that concluded all the questions. Again, Michelle, if you can go back to that last page of where to contact us in case you have any additional questions. If you want to talk about it further, feel free to come to the in-person meeting tomorrow. Love to meet you. And there is a survey that we have. So when you exit out of this webinar, you'll be prompted with a few questions. Again, we're always love feedback as we continue through this design process. So I think with that, we'll be concluding our webinar. Is there anything else, Michelle, that I'm missing?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, on the survey, I just want to share. So if you close out, if you're registered, it will be sent to your email. And then if you don't want to do the survey online, we will have the same questions available at the open house tomorrow that you can submit on paper.
All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for spending your evening with us. We really appreciate it. Always love, love, love the questions that you have for us. So have a great evening.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.